Alrighty. Story time.
Oh, is this Storytime already?
Yeah, it's
Oh,
already.
Oh, I'm so ready. All right, I called dibs on Storytime because I have a well, if you couldn't tell by my filleting story, I have quite a few, but I have two that I have to hit. What's the one that I said I was gonna hit while I was talking earlier?
Falling off a mountain.
No, we talked about that before the podcast. What was the one I talked about during the podcast?
That is an excellent question.
Rattlesnakes?
What?
Rattlesnakes, yeah.
Rattlesnakes?
Rattlesnakes. Okay, we'll start with rattlesnakes and then me falling off a mountain. Rattlesnakes one's super short, but I did say I was going to tell it. I was at Philmont, so I'm in New Mexico. Technically, I'm off property at this point because your hikes can go off property in certain areas that are like scouts work in tandem with national parks. I think.
Yeah, and I want to say some farmland as well.
Oh yeah, and some farmland, but I think this was one of the national parks areas. But anyway, that doesn't revolve too much around the story. Me and my tent mate were walking back, and we were just having a conversation. So we were walking from Rich Cabins to the fork that would lead us towards Baldy. If you're a scout that's been to Philmont and gone to that specific area, you might know what I'm talking about. If not, I was hiking on a trail towards a fork in the road. Anyway, we were just having a normal conversation, and we're just hiking, so we're taking steps, and he stops, or he doesn't fully stop, but like he stops our conversation. He goes, "What is that?" And I would turn to him like, "What?" As my foot's going down, and after I say "what," I hear a rattlesnake tail shaking. So he must have heard it slithering or shaking lightly before I did, but it was full on shaking, and my foot was above the middle section of a rattlesnake. And when we both figured out what the hell was going on, we went flying a few feet backwards, and it just kind of looked at us, put its tail back down, and then like snaked off the trail. So I almost stepped on a rattlesnake. I also did that while at Summit. There was a rattlesnake next to the trail, and I didn't even notice it and walked right by it, and the person behind me noticed it and screamed.
Yeah, I had a few participants see copperheads, not on the trail, but on a rock next to the trail.
That's not too bad. This one
Yeah,
was
not too
directly next to the trail. I don't know how I didn't notice it.
Yeah, I mean, snakes are just kind of temperamental, so if you leave them alone.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah. I had, last time I was at Philmont Scout Ranch in 2019, I had two really interesting encounters on the trail. The first of which was with a snake, specifically two rattlesnakes. It was our first night. We were just going over to go put up our bear bags, and me and a couple of the guys were going, and I was leading them over because, I was just the first guy to go out. And I'm walking down the trail, and then I hear the rattling sound, and I'm like, oh, what in the world's that, right? Well, I look down at my feet. There are two rattlesnakes basically caressing each other, doing snake things, adult snake things, right in front of me. Neither one of the snakes clearly had noticed that I was about to stomp on both of them on the trail. And of course, I think it was, who was it? I think it was Ian was right behind me, and he slammed right into me. And I don't know how, but I somehow stayed in place, and Ian goes, "What's that? What's that sound?" And I'm like, back up, back up, back up. And he's like, "Well, what's going on?" I'm like, "Child, don't look at this child." The whole way back, he's like, "What's going on?" I'm like, "I think there's snakes are doing adult snake things." And he looks over, he's like, "Ooh, I want to go see." But we had to go a little bit. We had to go a little bit a ways out. So that was the first one. The second one was actually with a bear. We saw a bear on the trail about 45, 50 yards ahead of us. And we actually had a burro, which is a donkey for those who don't know. And that was a very interesting situation where we've got a donkey, which can easily be startled and basically run us all over, a bear with two cubs right behind him, or right behind Mama Bear. And the guy who was in front at the time had his phone out and he took a picture of it. And all you could see was the cubs bolting into the forest. And we ended up having to stop for about 20 minutes so that we didn't run into the bear again. So that was this much, much spookier situation. So I don't know. Sometimes running into things is a fun after story, not a very good in the moment story. So we had to make ourselves very, very present. And the donkey that we had named Don K, looked overwhelmingly confused at us. Just like, why are you all making these sounds?
Yeah, I remember running into a cub while I was walking alone while I was working at the same camp that Trevor worked at last year. And I ended up seeing the bear just kind of shuffle down and then realizing it was a cub. I'm like, oh boy. And got to talk to myself out loud of, here, bear, bear, bears,
Well, I
please
do
don't
that
eat
with
me.
rabbits all the time anyway.
Yeah, but with bears, there's a bit more of a kind of
Oh, yeah.
incentive to make
I'm making
yourself
a
known.
joke, but yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. I guess, is it time for falling off the mountain story? Well, I guess I shouldn't say off. I should say down.
Let's end it there. Let's hear.
We're gonna end it on this one.
Absolutely, end it with
Can't
one
wait
of
to
the
laugh
best.
at this one.
I just want to make sure I don't have any other good ones. Nah, I have one about lightning, but that's not really our fault because in Philmont you can't control the weather and you can't stop.
True.
Yep.
Yeah, I guess we'll go with the mountain one. I love this story because I'm an idiot and it's funny. Anyway, so we're back again at Philmont. Philmont was probably my favorite hiking trip or scouting trip, and I died. Oh, no, I died. I almost died 4 times. We'll go with 4. The rattlesnake was one of them, if you're curious. Lightning was another one. And the other 2 were this moment. Did I fall down a mountain once? No, I fell down a mountain twice in the same 20 minutes. So, little backstory. We were hiking up Baldy Mountain. Again, if you're a scout, you probably know this one. If not, it is the tallest mountain on Philmont property. It's not the tallest mountain you can climb while you're at Philmont, but it's the tallest one on property. And at the top, it's a bunch of like shale and loose rock. It's not dirt. It's just loose, like large gravel. Is that how you guys would explain it?
I mean,
Yeah,
big rocks, big gravel.
Big gravel rocks. So we went up a side trail. I forget what town camp we started from, but we went up a side trail. And so that, even with the gravel, it's still kind of flat at an upwards angle, but we went down the front face of it. So it's a steep incline on just gravel until you get back to the tree line. So the first one is completely my fault of being a dipshit. And that is, we started the hike down and we were in our single file line, and I was at the front. I don't know why they put me at the front, but I was. And one of my friends from near the back is just talking, because we're talking amongst ourselves, and he goes, "This would be a bad time to sprint." And I go, "Bet." And I sprint forwards down a steep incline of large gravel. And it's high up in elevation, so I actually stop pretty quickly after like a few seconds because I was already starting to breathe a little heavy. I take 2 steps forward, trip on my own foot, and fall and start rolling down this hill for a solid few seconds. That had been like 5 or 10 because I got about as far as I did when I sprinted. And eventually my backpack stopped me. And I just sat up and went, wow, I just tripped over my own foot, didn't I? And so I'm sitting there in the gravel with scrapes on me, nothing too bad. So my friends catch up to me, they help me back up, and we start walking. And like I said, probably 10 to 20 minutes pass. I feel like 20 would be too long. Anyway, and we're spread out a lot more now. And me and one of the guys I was walking with see this kid stopped on the side of the trail, and it looks like he's kind of crying. So we stopped to see what's wrong. And so he's afraid of heights and falling off the mountain. You can see where this is going. So we stopped to talk to him. We're like, hey, we're just up there. It's a great time. The view's beautiful. There's a great breeze because it's kind of hot, but not too hot. The wind up there made it cold. So there's a nice breeze. We were trying to convince him. We were doing decently. He stopped crying at least, but he wasn't getting up to start moving. And eventually his scoutmaster comes up and we leave it to him. We're like, okay. And we're like, all right, see you, dude. We're going to head out. And we start walking away, and I trip on my own foot. Again. And I fall in front of this kid, and again, roll down this steep gravel mountain. This one, I don't roll as far. I actually get cut on this one, which is surprisingly enough. And I sit back up, and I turn towards my friend, and he's got kind of a slightly disappointed / surprised look on his face, and I look to the kid and he has the most horrified look on his face because what he is afraid of just happened in front of him. I couldn't help myself and I started laughing. And I look away as soon as I start laughing. My friend catches up to where I rolled, helps me back up, and we just start walking away, and I don't look back.
Never look back in that situation. Yeah, never look back. I'm sorry, I have to add the story of the first time I walked down Baldy. So it was time to go.
Is it down the front?
Yeah, it was down the front face. So my older brother was the spec leader at the time. And that meant that he got to choose the order that went up or went down, right? So out of the blue, he asks me to go first. And I was wondering why. So he's like, because, you got long legs, you can, you've got good stability. I'm like, I don't know. I don't know if I really want to. He's like, Ben, come here. I'm like, what? And then I walk over to him. And I think he's calling me over to whisper in my ear for a second. And you know what he does? He shoves me. And I start going straight down the hill. And of course, I caught myself before I decided to roll down. And then I hear him scream over the wind. He screams, "Don't stop. Just go."
I mean, it is a fast way down. I can tell you from experience. So, it's fast. It can hurt.
Pretty much my solution to the problem was, because it's so steep and you're going so fast, the only way I could actually keep myself upright was to do a moonwalk, right? Or a moon jump, right? You see the Apollo astronauts jumping up and down on the moon, right? Well, imagine doing that, but with all the gravity now and just sheet rock under you, right? So that's the only way you could really get down in a reasonable amount of time. And I finally catch myself about halfway down, and I look behind me, and William is just right behind me, coming full force. He's just and he screams down to me. He's like, "Don't stop, just keep going." And I'm like, okay, oh gosh, I was so glad that he was 100 yards out. But I think that's the loudest I've ever heard William shout, because he knew that if he went down or one of us went down, it was pretty much game over, because Thomas kind of told William, "Go next." And then
to be fair, all of us needed to poop at that time. So this was a rush down the mountain to the river.
Oh, really?
That was
yes,
true.
We ran
that
to
is true.
the
That
Red
is
Roof.
Another important part of the story.
Is there a Red Roof before Baldy Town?
There was one in Baldy Town.
So you had to hike to Baldy Town.
Yes, and we ran there.
Down the mountain. So we had very fun times dealing with the altitude coming back down. Yeah, good times.
Alrighty, guys. That was a lot of fun, because I like laughing at you guys. But next time, we're going to talk about each of our top 3 favorite meals to make at campsites, whether they just taste good or they're easy or they're cheap or whatever. But this has been A Day to Adventure podcast. Got it. So get off your butts, get outside, and enjoy the outdoors.